Welcome to the studio, the Quincy Access Television studio. I have a guest joining me today, Beverly Saul from the Essex Piano Trio. She's going to be talking about an upcoming performance at the Thomas Crane Public Library. Beverly, welcome back.
Thank you.
Pleasure to have you again in the studio.
Always nice.
And it's always great to talk music. We will be speaking today primarily about the Essex Piano Trio. Before we get to the Essex Piano Trio specifically, what is a piano trio?
Well, it's not for three pianos. People are sometimes surprised, but violin, the top voice, cello, the low voice, piano, the voice that kind of covers everything that's missing with the other two. So we have melody and harmony and melodies interwoven, plus the piano that adds just this fatness to the texture. And sometimes takes a solo role as well, but it's very cooperative. It's an unusual mix of instruments. Composers have not always written well for it.
Well, that was my next question. How do you find composers and therefore music to perform?
There are, I don't know, a couple of dozen at least really fantastic works by composers from Beethoven to Shostakovich.
Couple dozen.
Couple of dozen that are really just top-notch perfect. But a lot of composers are afraid of them. And they try and they don't quite make it. Somebody like Ravel, though, that we're working on the first time now, only did one trio, but it's masterful. He had worked a lot with textures and colors, a lot with piano and orchestra, but the way he then weaves our instruments together is magical. Not everybody understands that. So it's a treat to have it really well written for us.
No stranger to Quincy Access Television, certainly no stranger to the residents here in the city, as you have performed here in the past.
Well, we started playing together in 2017 and have since played up into Maine and down into Connecticut, Rhode Island and Connecticut. So a nice little circle of geography there, little places that we can go. And we met partly because of Salem State. I think I was working there as the accompanist for everything that went on. And so anything like with the orchestra things or faculty recitals. So Dave and Ashley appeared in and out in some of that. And finally we had realized we really liked one another. And I think Dave said, why don't we just play some trios?
Okay.
And we never stopped.
Since 2017.
Since 2017.
Let's talk about the members.
Dave Cabral is a fine cellist who really is a masterful musician in so many ways. He's a folk musician. He plays fife. He plays just about every string instrument possible. He sings. And so he has all this folk and other music that is a part of his world. But he is, by day, an echocardiologist. Did I say that right?
Yes.
For babies at Mass General.
So what a switch.
What a switch. And what a wonderful, wonderful guy. He's the calmest of us. He's our rock. And then there's Ashley, who is more passionate, just busy at everything, and so lovely. Beautiful violinist who plays with orchestras down, again, in Rhode Island, up in Maine, in New Hampshire, and has a nice studio for piano and violin. But she just plays everywhere. And so the gigging and the teaching is her full-time job. So between the two of them and their schedules to mesh with what I do in my kind of, I'm going to call it semi-retirement world now.
We have to talk about you as well.
Well, I have a doctorate in piano and chamber music from the University of Maryland. I have taught and played from Washington, D.C. to the Midwest, to Upper New York, to this area, and mostly as a collaborative pianist, often with singers. I love art song, but a lot with string players. And when as the accompanist at colleges, playing for everything from saxophone, double bass, to everything in between.
Right.
So I literally have played recitals, I think, with every instrument possible. And that's wonderful. Coming to Salem, though, was a quieter move for me. I spent some time in the classroom. I still teach women in music history, asynchronously, actually, at Salem State. But, and I was working very actively with singers in Boston for 5 years. I did the Boston Singers Resource Recital Series, which was great fun. But I think that kind of passed its peak. And so now I see only basically who I want to see. Isn't that a fun place to be?
That's a great place to be. Talk about the collaboration and how the three of you now performing as the Essex Piano Trio really play off of one another.
We do. You know, there's the hierarchy that I feel like the violin as the top voice is often the leader. The lower voice, because he has the solos too, I would say those two are very important. But nobody's ever following anybody. It really is learning one another's habits, learning how we interpret the music, how we play off one another, and then just to go together and make it happen without any ego. I think that's the magic.
And the name, Essex.
That's the county we live in.
Very good. Very good. And your concerts, there, I guess if there's a mission, if there's an overarching theme, it's conversation among friends. Explain that.
We found that wonderful statement about music being a conversation among friends when we were first looking for our mission statement. And I had a music calendar with this fabulous etching that you can show or not, but it's of 3 chamber musicians, kind of Picasso-esque,
right,
distorted, but the idea of the music all just coming together in this heap, I loved. And it really defines who we are, I think. And so as chamber musicians then, it's not about us, it's about the music, and it's about the interaction with the audience. I have met musicians who felt the audience was not important, and I thought, you're not going to be at it really long if that's how you feel. Because the audience is our canvas.
They play in.
They play in. We listen to how they're responding. We see their faces. We see the joy that they have in listening to us. And so the concerts themselves are often about learning and listening. And I talk a lot at the concerts. That seems to be something that people like because it sets the stage a little bit. I never talk down to the musicians, the people in the audience who know more about it than I do maybe, but I also don't want to ever insult anybody and assume they know what we're doing. So if I can gently tell what the links are, the connections that we've looked for in the programming, that makes it more comfortable for everybody.
So we should mention that when I say a conversation among friends, not only the friends in the trio, but the friends in any given room, in
Exactly.
any given venue.
And the composer.
This is a program at the Thomas Crane Public Library on March 8th. That is a Sunday. And you will be playing from 3 to 4 p.m. What can folks expect?
Well, this program has evolved from, we had an all-Russian program that we were working on last year, an all-Ravel program that's kind of in progress and not quite put together yet, but it's part of that process. But I was reading about Ravel and Vaughan Williams. They're an odd pair, aren't they? Vaughan Williams actually came from Britain to study with Ravel for 3 months in Paris. He was a little older than Ravel, but he needed some of that loosening up and yet some of the tightening of harmonic thinking. And that was a fabulous relationship. The 3 of them worked together for 3 months, and they went to the clubs in Paris, and Ravel went home with Vaughan Williams to meet the wife and to, see the small villages. And that close friendship really had a lot to do, I think, with both of them, how both of them were thinking about music. And they were both in World War I. In 1914, Vaughan Williams went in as an ambulance driver, as a stretcher bearer, I'm sorry, and Ravel as an ambulance driver. And they both saw the heart of the horrible stuff.
So they had shared experience.
They had shared experiences. And so both of them wrote music then that reflects that. And I think had they not met, perhaps they wouldn't have written quite the same. And they wouldn't have had that friendship to sustain them. So that's part of it. And then we're doing another pair of friends Tchaikovsky and Arinsky. And Tchaikovsky was the older, well-established, just one of the most famous composers in the world. And Arinsky came into the conservatory to teach beside him as a young professor. But the two of them really got to be friends, and Tchaikovsky became the mentor for Arinsky. Both very shy men who weren't particularly comfortable with other people, I think. Both prone to gambling and drinking, and it caused both of them problems, particularly Arinsky. But there was that tightness of just the camaraderie and the health they felt about music. They both loved Schumann and Mendelssohn and some of those European pianists who were so famous. And that shows up in their piano trios. So how fun to pull together those things about the people.
The Essex Piano Trio appearing at the Thomas Crane Public Library on Sunday, March 8th from 3 to 4 p.m. We do have a sample of what you can expect, at least musically, from the Essex Piano Trio. I'll let you, Beverly, set this up.
Okay. We played an all-French program 2 or 3 years ago here, and I remembered that the Pavane for a Dead Princess had been on that. That was in our earlier days, so perhaps we'll play it better now, who knows. But it's
I thought it was played well.
But it's a lovely, lovely, very romantic piece. Ravel was studying with Fauré at that point, so it reflects all that just luscious sound. It's sort of like Saint-Saëns' Swan, one of those pieces that people say, oh, that's so pretty. So that'll start us off and set up what is to come after, and I think you are going to love every bit of it.
Thank you for joining us for this particular program. And remember to, number one, check out the Essex Piano Trio at the Thomas Crane Public Library. And number two, support your local access television station right here in the city of Quincy. Thank you.